So hello everyone, welcome to my very thoughtful world. As you guys know, I work super hard to bring you all positive, powerful women who have decided to become entrepreneurs. As a mindset coach for female entrepreneurs, I know the struggle that we all face. And I want you to realize that what you may be facing or dealing with is typical or normal, but you don't have to stay stuck in the place you are. So today I'm excited to bring on Michelle Biggs. Michelle is a coach herself. She's going to tell you all about her amazing coaching program. So Michelle, welcome to Very Thoughtful World.
Thank you, Caneisha. I really appreciate being on. I know we've been trying to get together for the
Yeah.
last year. So finally, what a perfect time to have
Yes.
this type of conversation at the beginning of the year. So I appreciate you for
Of course.
having me.
I appreciate you coming on. And like you said, particularly this time of the year when people are setting goals or visions or intentions, I think it's so powerful to hear from a coach and to talk about like what made you decide to start your coaching business.
Yeah. So just to talk a little bit about myself, Michelle Biggs, CEO of My Best Everyday Coaching and Consulting, which I launched in 2017. And I decided to launch the business. Really, for me, it was more a focus on life coaching at that time because I went through pretty tough divorce for me. But then I realized I attended one of my first certification classes, and the leader was asking us, what do we plan to do with our business? And I'm sitting there like, business? I mean, that wasn't even a thought. I was just like, oh, I'm just going to coach people. It's going to help me to coach people. But that was the first time the idea of actually having a coaching business really came to mind for me. And so I launched my business right after I went through the certification. And right now, today, my focus is on executive career and life coaching. But I do a little bit. I do a little bit of everything because I'm also focusing on the life coaching piece through my podcast,
Okay.
Real Conversations with Michelle. So that's a little bit about me and why I actually stepped into starting the business.
Yeah. So what did you ever have any like reservations or were you ever in that mindset or place where you worried or stressed out about how do I do this? Should I do this? You know, that I call them mind monsters.
Yeah, absolutely. In my family, I'm the first one to be an entrepreneur in my immediate family. So
Mm.
I had no blueprint around how to actually start a business. So I touched base with a couple of women who I knew who had businesses just to see, what they did. And I remember talking to another friend of mine who was doing podcasting at the time, right? Because I wasn't quite sure, how to promote myself. It's so funny. I worked in HR for 37 years
Wow.
as a senior human resources professional, and I've always done coaching on the professional side of things. But being able to promote myself, I've always been that person kind of behind the scenes. People will come to me naturally because I was their HR leader, right? But now I was in a place where I had to promote what I was doing, right? So yeah, the doubts and fears, like, what am I doing, was definitely in my head. And we can also get into this place of comparison, which is
Yes.
a hard thing to do. And around the time where I really stepped into the space of really promoting my business was during the pandemic. So everybody was online, right? No one was doing that face-to-face coaching, right? We were all at home. So you had a lot of people who were doing podcasts around a variety of different things. And I remember a friend of mine who said, Michelle, why don't you go live on Facebook and introduce yourself as a coach? And I was petrified, absolutely petrified, because I'm like I said, I've always been one who was behind the scenes,
Mhm.
not good with self-promotion at all.
Yeah.
And you see what you see online and think, I may need to do that as well, which is the worst thing that we can ever do, right? We need to be our authentic selves, and leverage our strengths where we can use it the most.
Absolutely.
Right. So once I kind of got out of my head of that comparison thing, it went well. And today I'm 3 years into podcasting and coach CEOs and, you know, everywhere down to administrative assistants. And it's been a blast. It really has been a
Awesome.
blast. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, wonderful. I am so thankful that you was willing to like go there with the backstory, because a lot of times, like you say, we compare. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a saying that say we compare our right now to someone else's perfect reel because we're watching them on Facebook or Instagram, and so we have this our ideal, a concept of how great it must be, how easy it must be. Oh, it's easy for them. But the reason I do this is because I want women to recognize that just because it's challenging, just because your mind tell you can't do it, doesn't mean that you can't. And I think
Absolutely.
they hear from other women. I'm hoping they'll go ahead on and start their business too.
Absolutely. And what we see online is a lot of times what people might edit,
Yeah,
right? And we don't know how they got to that point,
that's right.
right? One of the things, and I know you know this, it takes a lot of work to do what we do. And for us to perfect what we're doing, our craft and things, it takes a lot of work. And a
Yes.
lot of people don't see that, right? The hours that we spend trying to perfect our craft and make sure that we're doing things in a way that is one, pleasing to God, right? First
Mhm.
and foremost,
Yeah.
and authentic to ourselves,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
So those are the things we don't see and people tend not to talk about.
Yeah. What about, I want you to speak to this thing that to me I'm seeing and have been seeing for a while that kind of drives me crazy. How one, everybody is a coach and everybody's making six figures. And they are like, they started their coaching um, career on Monday, and by Friday, Michelle, they are making six figures. Speak to that, please.
And I laugh every time I see it.
Yeah.
And I'm a true believer that do your homework before you align yourself to anything or any person who's selling something. I always tell even my clients who I meet with is meet with another coach, make sure we are a good match for each other,
Right.
right? I need to make sure I'm a good match for you, but also you need to make sure that we have a good chemistry, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, Caneisha, what I do know, if I think about even myself as a senior HR professional, it took me a while to get to where I was,
Yes.
right? From the time I started, and I have a background in HR, I have a master's and bachelor's degree in HR. Took me 37 years to get to a point where my credibility and everything went up. By the time I left, people were like, yes,
Mhm.
I know Michelle, I know what she does. And the credibility was there, right? To build up to that point and leave. So, you know, to think that you're just going to do coaching, if that's what you're looking to do, or anything,
Anything.
it takes time. It
Yeah.
takes time to build up that credibility. And to make that kind of money on coaching, and again, it's if you're doing individual coaching versus group coaching. I mean, there's different ways to make money.
Yes.
But the one-on-one coaching, you have to be coaching probably 30 people, 40 people at a time to make
Yeah.
that kind of money, or charging people an astronomical fee to do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But one, know your worth because you don't want to undercut yourself, right? By what you're paying, by what you're charging people.
Yeah.
So that's important. And a lot of times we do that, especially as women, we do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, but it takes time. It doesn't mean that you can't get there, but you have to think about the model that you're
Mhm.
going to use and what you want to present and sell,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, these and I got caught up in actually listening to one of these people who said they made six figures and all this money within a very short period of time. And after listening to them and listening to some feedback from others, was like, there's no way
Right.
that happened without doing the things that you need to do to promote yourself, sell yourself, and understanding the value that you bring so that you have your price point at that place where you
Yeah.
can charge that.
Yeah.
But credibility is going to be key,
Yes.
right? In terms of being able to do that, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I love that you said that because I remember when I started, um, I was living in Beijing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have to learn to value myself more. Like I had a mentor. And she
Mm-hmm.
at that time she told me my prices was too low because she said people won't take you seriously. But Michelle, I start getting the clients and I start seeing a difference. And I didn't hit six figures, but I
Mm-hmm.
did see a difference once. One, like you said, I got put myself out there. And then two, people purchase, we say this and we say it from a perspective of online. People purchase from people they know, trust, and like. So
Absolutely.
to think you can start today and somebody want to give you a lot of money tomorrow, it takes time for
Mm-hmm.
people to want to give you their money. And I really just wanted to talk a lot about that this year because I don't want people to one get discouraged because they're not, well, they're already making six figures and I'm not. You don't know that, you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
And the thing people have to understand, even when someone tells you I can teach you how to make six figures, doesn't mean they're making it. It
Exactly.
just means that they've been through a program where they've learned the strategies and the methods that will eventually get you there.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean it's going to get you there tomorrow. It doesn't mean that they're
No.
necessarily making it. Um, and I don't want women to get discouraged or give up because I know I spent some time in my transition coming back to America, learning having to use like Facebook and these platforms on a regular, comparing myself
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. And
just
it depends on your client too, because I do know, if you have corporate clients,
mhm,
absolutely you can probably make that.
yeah.
I don't know, in a year of coaching, you could potentially. But you also have to balance that with how many clients are you having to work
Mhm,
with to get there. Right. And at that point, you have to determine what's your value proposition for yourself in
mhm,
terms of your time and where you want to spend your time versus the money.
yeah,
Right. Because with that comes things that you'll have to balance in order to do that,
absolutely.
right? So, mhm,
What has been one of your, because I know as coaches, like we love to see our clients transform or
mhm.
just even working. Because sometimes, like as coaches, we show up with our hat on. We have to be intentional about taking it off.
Yes,
And I
yes,
know
absolutely.
many of us, we're just motivators. Even if you're not working with us, we just motivate people. Like I go places and I think to myself, Michelle, I'm standing in Belk and the line, I'm talking. And then people, oh my God, you just made me feel so good. You inspired me.
Mhm,
What did I?
mhm,
So I know
mhm.
how we can easily show up in that energy and who we are. Tell me about a story or a transformation from one of either your clients or someone you knew that just really touched your heart and showed you that you was moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I think I did a workshop on, the power of no,
Mhm.
and I had several women who participated in that workshop, and when I tell you the tears that flowed, providing the space for people to just release and talk about things that they really never talked about out loud. And being able to provide that space and have people walk away and say, you know what, Michelle, that was like the best thing that I've done for myself. Right. So, and I tell you, that was important for me because one, I've been in this space of, the life coaching versus career coaching. And everybody, I don't know about you, Caneisha, but a lot of people were like, you got to pick a niche. Go ahead and pick a niche.
Yeah.
Right. And working in HR as long as I have, of course, I've always done the professional coaching, but I ran a mentoring program for high school girls. Right. So I've always kind of been in this helping place of wanting to mentor and help people. But for me, it kind of solidified that, I could do both, the
Mhm.
life coaching and career coaching. I didn't have to give up one to do the other,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
just how do I go about, doing it in my business, and how do I, how do I manage the two? Right. Real
Yeah.
conversations. My podcast gives me the ability to talk about a lot of different life topics.
Awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have the ability to have group coaching with women
That's
on
good.
those topics that provides them with challenges, right? But for me, that's where I really solidified, okay, I am in this right space in terms of coaching,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
On the career side, I mean, like I said, I did it all the time. So to see someone, the testimonials and people give feedback in terms of how I help them to think differently, right? Or they achieved their next role, right? Or they handled such a tough situation with another colleague or even their boss, and they
Hmm.
felt good about the outcome of that conversation. To me, that's when I know, I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right space.
Yeah. It's nothing like it. It's just nothing like it.
It isn't. It isn't. Mm-mm.
I can't even imagine. The funny thing is, I remember and you talked about how your divorce kind of led you to this space of coaching. For
Mhm.
me, my marriage was in trouble.
Mm.
I reached out to, she was a therapist, but she operated her business like a coach.
Okay.
She did group coaching. And after working with her, I forgot how long her program was. It was really good. She reached out and she said, Caneisha, I think you should become a coach.
Mm.
So it's that whole like your pain will definitely lead you towards your purpose if you let it. And then learning how to take that instead of just getting lost in it or sad. We're going to have sad moments like, because that
Mhm.
was a really
Mhm.
challenging time for me. But having her show me, Michelle, that here I was the victim, right? I went, oh my God, I can't believe this happened to me. I was
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
victim. And walking with her name was Marcia. When she finished, I was like, you mean to tell me like just how and shifting your mind, shifting the way you think, changing perspectives, learning a new strategy on the way to move and be,
Mhm.
everything. And I just say that to say that's the beauty of one being an entrepreneur. Like we know that we can go in and really help someone reshape their life and make
Mhm.
living their purpose. And then the other thing is we never stop growing.
No,
We
no,
never stop growing.
no. And I'll tell you the other piece of that, Kanisha, and I really try to make sure I do this, is as a coach, we're not telling people what to do,
Right.
right? We're not
Yeah.
telling people what to do. We're
Yeah.
asking questions that will help them to figure out those things
Yeah.
themselves. Because the truth of the matter is, it's all within us.
Mhm.
Sometimes we need that person to help us make sense of what it is,
That's
our
right.
options, and how best to move forward,
Yeah.
right? Um, so that's the beauty of coaching for
Mhm.
people, is to be able to give them the space and ask the right questions so that they have time to really sit back and think about sort of what's next,
Yeah.
right? And how best to manage a situation,
Yeah.
right? Mhm.
Yeah. That reflection piece.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I attended a women's retreat by my church. And but prior to going to that one, I went to a women's retreat with Tina Lafford. Do you know her? The lady from she plays in Queen Sugar.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
went to her retreat up in Boone, North Carolina, last year around I think it was on
I didn't know
August.
she had a retreat. She's doing that?
Michelle. Michelle.
Okay.
Because sometimes I don't know if you have this experience, but sometimes as coaches, it's a little bit harder for us to like we need someone who's really moving in that space to get us to shift.
Absolutely.
You can't
Absolutely.
don't come to me with no. I'll be like, look here, little girl, go sit down. You ain't doing nothing.
Yeah. No,
I know
absolutely.
I know you mean
Absolutely.
well, but like you really have to come with. I think of it when the scripture says, "You by now you should be on food, but you still on milk."
Mhm.
I have to
Yeah.
have a coach that knows how to feed me solid food, the heavy, like, girl, when I'm not, when I serve you the hors d'oeuvres, it's going to be so heavy, you're not even going to want the buffet. Like, I need
Yeah,
that kind of coach.
yeah. And that's
And
important, Caneisha, even as entrepreneurs, because we're talking about coaching, is to
yeah,
align yourself with people who are really going to push you,
yes.
right? Aligning yourself to someone who's going to push you to do better and to be better,
Mhm.
right? Because sometimes we can get so complacent in terms of where we are that we
Yes.
really truly don't realize the gift that we have. And it takes someone, to your point, seeing someone who's out there who's doing something that aligns with who we are, our values and things like that, that will help us to move ourselves,
Yes.
right? So it's important to align yourself to someone who is really going to push you,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
To be better and to do better.
Yeah. And you know,
Mhm.
and you mentioned earlier with your community, my coach, we're a community of
Mhm.
coaches, but she runs groups. And the value I get from being around other women
Yes.
who are entrepreneur, who aren't afraid, Michelle, to talk about money goals, who don't shame each other for like, what do you mean you just made, this big amount and now you still want to make more? You have to be in a circle of women who get it, who's
Yes.
moving forward. Because if you're around, surrounded by people who are like naysayers or
Yes.
doubt everything or make you question,
Yeah.
it can really be a problem. You're doing too much. That is
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I remember sharing my dream with a lady one time in China, and she said, "Well, don't you just like you're doing really good now? Why would you?"
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell you, one of my goals this year is to network more, right?
Mm,
One, because I have the time to do it. I'm retired from corporate America,
yeah.
but to be able to do that so that I can, one, hear and see what people are doing,
Mhm.
so I can keep my momentum,
Yeah.
right? Because, like I said, a lot of times we can become complacent, and there are people who are naysayers because something didn't happen for them.
Right.
They want to put that on you. But one of the things I would say as an entrepreneur, we cannot be afraid to try new things either, right?
Yeah.
So, but putting yourself around positive people who are like-minded, who are trying to be their best and do their best is very important.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
the women who will not let you quit on yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
the journey will make you want to quit. Like last year was, I would say, was my year of quitting every couple of weeks. Like,
Really?
Michelle. Yeah. And it would be so funny because I would be my coach. Again, was a group of us.
Yeah.
And she's like, how? I'm like, I quit. I quit. I quit. I'm done. And she would just go, okay. And then the next time we meet, she's like, "What?" I'm like, I did this, I did that. She was like, you have the
Mhm.
funniest way of quitting.
Mhm.
I,
Mhm.
I quit many times as a mental break, but I'm not going to give up.
Right. Right.
And
And
she,
Kanisha, yeah, and the other part of that, sometimes as a business owner, we might need to pivot. That's
yes,
different from quitting,
yes,
right? You
mhm,
may try something and it doesn't work. Okay. What else can you do?
that's right.
Right? So we cannot be afraid to pivot. If I think about where I was 2017 when I first launched my business, I mean, I really didn't do a whole lot with my business in 2017, right? Because I still had a full-time job. I was able to coach at my full-time job. Like I said, 2020 pandemic, I got bored and was like, I need to do something. How I'm going to help my people with all the stuff that's going on.
Yeah,
But I have pivoted along the way, right? There's things that I tried. Okay, didn't get the number of people that I wanted.
mhm,
Um, but I also have this mindset that even if I'm helping one person, I'm good with that,
yes,
right? So you really have to step into your why in terms of what you're doing and why you're doing it.
yes,
Right, and make sure that you're staying true to yourself around that, or else, and it doesn't mean you're not gonna have those moments where you feel like, "Dang, right? Why am I doing this?" Right?
yeah,
Um, but get at the core of your purpose and what you value.
Mhm. Yeah.
And do you have the ability and capability to continue? Right.
Yeah, that's good. You're right. And that is a lot of times what it is. I think the obstacle come to teach us or to shift us in a different direction in
Hmm.
some space,
Yeah. Yes.
whether that is in we might need to try a new business strategy. And like you talked about earlier, getting out there networking.
Hmm.
One of the things I want to do more this year is collab. I did some collab
Hmm.
last year that was great, but even this year I want to be even more intentional.
Yes.
Because historically we grew up with this concept of competition.
Yes.
There would have been times where really and truly there have been people like, you're going to have a coach on your coaching platform? Yes.
Let me tell you, Caneisha, when I started my podcast, I remember some folks, and you've been on my podcast, and
Yeah.
I typically have others on my podcast. And for me, it just makes for a richer conversation versus me just being the mouthpiece,
Yeah.
right? But I also, for me, it was about exposing people to other people, right? But also being a partner to that person, because if people are seeing you, there might be someone out there who might need you, right?
Yeah.
And but there is that, if I think about when I first started out, I did run into some people who were very closed about what they were doing. And
Mhm.
I was like, wow, right?
Yeah.
But you get this thing, and it's out there and it's gonna be there till the end of time, right? But again, there's also those people who are there who will support you,
Yes.
right? And it's about finding your person or
Mhm.
people who will be that circle for you, right? And those who are not there for you is like, you got to say bye
Yeah.
bye.
And don't take it personal.
Don't take it personal.
Personal. Yeah. I
Mm-mm.
like to ask this question before I end the podcast because I think this is so important. What book would you recommend? What book are you reading now? What books
Yeah.
for you?
So there's two books um that I would say set the tone for me to be where I am right now and just drive how I think and how I approach things. One was Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren,
I remember that one.
and the other one was Battlefield of the Mind
Okay.
by Joyce Myers. And I
Yeah.
say those two because being an entrepreneur is not for the faint at heart. It is not. And there's so many things that can get in the way. Our thinking, I call it stinking thinking, right? Can get in the way of us being the best that we be. And sometimes it's that voice
Mhm.
that is that person sitting on our shoulder, our past, that prevents us from truly being our best selves. So being mindful around how we think is important, right?
Mhm.
And as you know, both of us are believers, right? So I
Yes.
do believe in um going to God in prayer with everything that I do to make sure that it is the right thing for me, right?
Mhm.
And I've been blessed to have some partnerships that I never thought about last year, right? Um so but I pray about it to make sure that it's right for me, right? It could be right for the person, but it also has to be right for me.
Absolutely.
Right. So, but those two books really helped ground me in terms of who I am and how I approach life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would recommend those two.
I love it. I love it. Well,
Mhm.
listen, thank you so much for coming on. As I say, thank you for hanging out in my very thoughtful world.
Yes, yes. And I'm so proud of you, Caneisha. I know you really are trying to uplift other entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I see you. I know we don't get to talk often, but I see your posts when you post. And like I said, you've been my guest as well.
Yeah.
So, and it's good for all of us to establish partnerships with people who we admire, number one,
Yes.
and who are doing good things to support others. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. Guys,
Mhm.
if you don't do anything else, make sure you connect with a woman who supports you, who gets what you're doing, that you all share the same values, and that you are like-minded. We
Yes.
know, Michelle and I both know that you all can capable of accomplishing anything once you get your mind right. A lot of
Yes.
times it feels like it's a lot of things outside of yourself. It's really just simply the way you're thinking, and because of the way you're thinking, it affects the way you're choosing, because what you're choosing it affects your outcomes. And so you can change that anytime you're ready. So we want to say thank you guys for watching. If you want to get in touch with me or Michelle, go to our links. They'll be right here on the page. And again, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And make sure you like, follow, and share.